It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, November 28th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that has some really fun Phantoms things to talk about today.
Always eat at the Waffle House.
Oh my God. All right, let's start the show.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at @rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. We are on YouTube, we're on the SiriusXM app, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Before we get to Phantoms Tuesday, we do have a game tonight against the Carolina Hurricanes. No practice yesterday for the Flyers, so no hints at any potential lineup changes here, but we may have gotten some clues from head coach John Tortorella.
Yeah, so basically, when asked about, Zamula, Egor Zamula, said that, he's been wildly inconsistent, but that's expected. But he is going to put in a lineup that's, based on winning. He wants to win. And winning is fine. John doesn't ever talk about rebuilding. And the last time there was a real need for him to teach a defenseman in Cam York, he sent him down to Lehigh. And then when York was doing really well in Lehigh and presumably fixed, he brought him up. Although I think Cam's got problems now and should go to the second pairing, and I think that would fix them now. Even that's not being done. But the fact is, for as long as the Flyers feel like, or at least John feels like, he is going to have a chance at the playoffs, it's going to affect Zamula's development because he's not going to get in as many games as you'd like. Of course he's going to be inconsistent, but you're trying to build a 23-year-old defenseman rather than having to go out and get one on the open market. That's the goal here.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, we talked about at the beginning of the season, we've been talking about it, throughout the game so far, that the goal for this season was player development and making sure that in this very critical next trade deadline and next off season, we know what we've got. We know who we want to trade. We know who we want to hold on to for the long term in this rebuild process. And in order to do that, you have to maximize your player development. And I think that for me, John Tortorella is much better at developing forwards than he is a defenseman, hence him sending York down to Lehigh Valley because he doesn't know what to do with it. I think that you can argue with his lineup decisions game to game in terms of, is this the best way to win? Because a coach wants to win, the players want to win. That's fine, like you said. But I think as far as knowing what to do with younger defensemen, I think this is where he's in the dark a little bit and is not sure how to rely on his assistant coaches in order to get there. I do think that he is much more focused on the forwards and making sure that Tyson Foerster stays in the lineup for the same exact reason that you said Egor Zamula should come out of the lineup. Tyson Foerster has remained in the lineup. And that's where I see the difference between how he can develop forwards versus defensemen here.
Right. But, there's other people within the Flyers organization he could fall back on. Nick Schultz. He used to be a defenseman. He's in player development. Have a conversation with him. I don't feel that goes on.
Yeah, I don't know if that goes on. And again, this is like a gut feeling from me in terms of the evidence that I've seen that he is either more focused on the forwards or has a better ability to develop the forwards than the defenseman.
Position to take, though, because we do see some, circumstantial evidence for that. But what I do know is He doesn't want to talk about a rebuild. He thinks he's in the heat of winning right now, and for as long as they are, he is going to continue to manipulate as many veterans in that lineup as he can. And then if they seem to fall out of it, then I think he's going to fall back on the rebuild, and that's not how you rebuild.
Yeah, I want to check in again on this very topic in a few weeks to see where the team is going and where the lineups are headed, and we can reevaluate then. In the meantime, we've got a game tonight against the Carolina Hurricanes. We're playing the Canes 4 times this season. So far, we've split the 2 games, and the visiting team has won both games. The last game against Carolina isn't until March, so this is the last time we'll see them for quite some time due to the schedule gods. The last time, of course, the Flyers won 3-1 a couple of weeks ago. Since then, the Canes have won this past Sunday versus Columbus. They won 3-2. Kachikov was in net for them. It was a comeback win with 3 goals in 8 minutes in the third period. Nobody scored in that game, either team, until the third period. So that
Right.
made it kind of a wild game. Svechnikov got his first goal of the season. Hard to believe it took this long, but he had gone 10 games without scoring, and he got the
That's
game
crazy.
winner there.
That is crazy. Yeah, there's some slight changes to the lineup. It's interesting. They put Bunting on the fourth line. If he's going to be a fourth liner for them, they've wasted their money because he was playing with Matthews in Toronto and getting those points. And if you can't play in your top 6 and get those points, then it's not a great contract. Other than that, mostly the same. The other issue is I see no Tony DeAngelo.
Yeah, that's a couple of the changes that they have made since the last time we previewed a game against Carolina is that Svechnikov was actually moved to that second line with Kotkaniemi as
Right.
the center, and that has worked out for him so far in terms of getting more chances. Teravainen on that top line, him and Aho have really good chemistry, and so I think that Rod Brindamore just really thought that he needed to tweak a couple little things in this lineup. And I think Bunting just got the short end of the stick. Yeah,
I
in
was
terms of him having to go to that fourth line. It was kind of odd man out there.
Yeah, Teravainen is one of those guys that can play anywhere up and down the lineup. So he's a valuable guy that way. And yeah, I've seen him play in every role. So
Yeah,
he's shot.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then talking about Tony DeAngelo, I think that they just thought Jalen Chatfield was a better option with Dmitry Orlov, and that
safer.
yeah,
It's a safer option. That's what because
yeah,
Orlov already has all the skating and all the offense. So why have 2
mhm.
guys like that?
Exactly. Exactly. And so I think and that turned out to be successful for them in this most recent game. So I think that, Rob Brindamore recognizes that his lineup is a little older than it used to be.
Yeah,
And so it needs speed and it needs efficiency. And in terms of putting your best forward pairings together, that's what you need to do and getting a defense that can fulfill everything it needs to do, whoever is out there on the ice. And that has led to some success. They did lose to Tampa 8-2 with Antti Ranta was in that game the entire game and did not get pulled, which must have been brutal for him.
yeah. There's been a lot of 7, 8 goals in games in the league though recently. There's
Yeah.
the NHL puts out their Monday morning bulletin and they pointed out. I think off the top of my head, there's been 5 or something, and so there's a lot. And so based on that, I guess maybe in this new era we shouldn't be so shocked anymore about leaving the guy in. Now they are missing Freddie Anderson. That is something that's
Yeah.
you know tough for them because he is technically still their number one. So they are still trying to find that balance between the 2 goalies, and that's where the Flyers could take advantage.
Yeah, I think so, and I think anytime they're matching up against, that 3rd line there, of course, we have to watch out for Jesper Fast, who has had some success
Yeah,
against the Flyers, but Jordan Stahl and, Martinook have not really been producing this
the same. They're
season,
not
and
the same.
Yeah, they are just not. And so that's kind of a weak link for Carolina right now.
It is. Jordan Stahl's, getting up there in age, and while he's still good defensively and still can skate, putting the puck in the net hasn't been as good. So, yeah, there's a few things that are holding him back. Although I will say that now bunting on the fourth line is interesting because uh, their fourth line is a lot faster. Now, bunting does get into it with guys, but not necessarily to fight, more to agitate like Sean Avery used to do. So it'll be interesting to
Right.
see that dynamic. Like, again, if I were the Flyers, I wouldn't put in my whole all tough fourth line because I don't think you need it against this team, but they will.
We'll see what happens there. And of course, we will be back tomorrow to discuss how the game went. In the meantime, the Phantoms had a pretty solid weekend and some real success coming out of Lehigh Valley that has been continuing. We will talk about them coming up next. You know that feeling when your favorite Flyers player scores a hat trick? If you want to get that feeling and win 100 times your money, play daily fantasy hockey on the Sleeper app. It's the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL network, and it's our top choice for daily fantasy sports, especially daily fantasy hockey. Fans can also play daily fantasy NFL, NBA, MLB when it's in season, and college football on Sleeper, and entries can be made in under a minute. With elite players like Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, and Austin Matthews, plus the new guys like Connor Bedard, all you need to do is make more or less picks on stats for those stars. You choose things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more. To win that 100 times bet on Sleeper, you have to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Flyers fans. You can win 100 times your money by playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. In addition to recapping the game against Carolina, we'll be answering your mailbag questions on tomorrow's show. So get them in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com, send us a DM on the app formerly known as Twitter, or comment over on YouTube. Of course, that game starts at 7:30. You can catch every second of the Flyers hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search for Flyers. So the Phantoms, 2 wins and an overtime loss this past weekend. So we have a 6-game point streak going. They are 4th place in the division and 8th in the conference. This is based on point percentage because there's still a little bit of differential in games played here, but they moved up in spots in the division. Again, points in all 3 games. They're 9 points behind Hershey, who's always just way far and above, but within real good striking distance of Hartford, 5 points behind there. And I think that the Phantoms are in a really good spot right now. They know what they're doing well. It's continuing. It's been, a couple of weeks now, at least 2 to 3 weeks of really strong play, especially from certain players. And they know exactly what they need to work on, which is, I think, is a good place to be for an AHL team.
Yeah, I mean, they do know their roles. There is a little too much shuffling, but team does have some cohesion. They're playing a lot of close games. You never know how that's going to go late in the season, so you kind of wish they weren't. But other than that, I like what I see. I wish there was a carrot for some of the guys, especially the top liners, to know that if they keep playing this way, they can get a call up. I can't tell you there is. So it's good to see that they're still going to just carry on. And, they are developing. Whether we see Olle Lycksell develop elsewhere, it's probably going to happen. But for now, he's getting better. Like, he's even getting better as an AHLer. So again, he's 24. He's not out of the realm where you say, I don't think this guy can be anything. I'm not there with him.
Yeah, I think, if you want to talk about that top line again, they had another tremendous week. If you look at the team scoring leaders, Olle Lycksell has 18 points in 18 games played. He's 10th in the AHL overall, 2nd in goals, has the most shots on goal in the AHL. Tanner Laczynski, 17 points, 20th in the AHL, had the game-winning goal on Saturday. Samu Tuomaala just had his third 3-point game of the season. He's 23rd in the AHL in points, 12th in assists. On the rookie side of things, he's 5th in rookie scoring and leads the AHL in assists for rookies. So, like, this top line is still continuing to fire on all cylinders here. They're playing well, not just like together, but I think, individually, they know what to do. They know what their role is. And I just could not be happier with these three guys right now.
Yeah, I mean, with Tuomaala, this is what we wanted to see. I think we all wish
Yeah.
we'd seen it like 2 years sooner. But he's doing it now, and that's good. I mean, all of it's good. There's no negative here. And so, yeah, if they're going to stay together, then let them be one of the best lines in the league. Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, and I think that it's carrying over into the power play because these
Mhm.
three guys get a ton of power play time. If you look at it, last week we talked about the power play because they were at 50%. They were at 50% again this weekend. 5 of 10 power plays were successful. They're now second in the AHL in the power play overall, which, if you think about the Phantoms last season, I felt like every single Tuesday we would say, "Oh, the power play again. Oh, the power
Right,
play again."
right. We
Right?
did. People can go back and listen. We did say that.
Yeah, and this season, like, over the last several weeks, they finally have gotten it together, and I think this top line and this personnel, along with, I think, Emil Andre to some degree has been contributing to the power play. I think Helge Grans has not been a name we've mentioned much, but he's gotten some power play time that I think has helped as well, but I do think Cooper Marody has been on the power play, and he's found some success
I
there.
mean, we can't
And
mention any defensemen. There's 15 of them up in
well,
Philly, so
yeah, that is true. But I do think that this goes hand in hand when you have this top line that just cannot be stopped, and then they're the ones on your power play. It's good. Both things are going to go well.
yeah, yeah, no doubt. It's all going well, and that's good. I mean, that's all positive.
It is a really good thing to see. And, I would say that the main thing that they need to work on right now. And Lappy is the first person that would tell you that. He mentioned it post game after the last game against Rochester is just the penalty kill. I mean, the
Right.
penalty kill is 18th in the league. They have 3 shorthanded goals so far this season, which is pretty good. So they're trying to do a similar aggressive style that the Flyers have to some degree, but it is just not there. And so I think that's something they know they need to work on a little bit. And part of that problem is not taking penalties.
Right.
And they know, again, those are two
It's a
things that
weak
go
point
hand
in
in
your
hand.
team. Don't keep taking penalties.
Right, and so they still have the most penalty minutes in the league overall, and they lead the league in most time shorthanded, and so if you look even at the success they're having, you look at their goal differential, they're even at 52 goals for and goals against, despite them having a winning record, like a
And that's because
stronger,
of that. Yeah.
and that is 100% because of that. I think honestly, like, the biggest issue here is Garrett Wilson. He
Yeah.
needs to just cut out the nonsense. I think that, he's the guy that's gonna get into a fight. He's the one that's gonna retaliate, and I understand that there's a role for that in the league, but if he's really the only guy doing it, he's got the most penalty minutes in the league overall, and that's a
Yeah, he
big
doesn't need to
reason.
do it at a prolific rate.
No, and he's gonna get himself into trouble because if you get a certain number of fighting majors, then you get suspended.
And I
So
can't say it's all for just the fans because he's doing it on the road and at home. It's like, look, the entertainment value should be more in the scoring than that. But
yeah.
even so, it's just, it just, yeah, you got to slow it down because a lot of it could probably be curbed.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I don't want other guys who we need to be developing getting sucked into this kind of play who don't need it and is not going to benefit them. Like, oh, say Wade Allison. Like, I don't want Wade Allison getting into fights
Well,
because he feel like he has to pick up the slack.
I know, but unfortunately, the metamorphosis of Wayne Allison may be just that. Like that may be where he's headed. And he may not do it on the Flyers, but I see this with other, young players that have gotten NHL time. All of a sudden they can't get NHL time. So then they have to find a position or a role that does this. So then all of a sudden he's going to play to that. And that may be the only way he gets back in the NHL. And so it wouldn't shock me if it happens.
Yeah, I certainly hope it doesn't. And the way he played this past weekend doesn't indicate that to a large degree. I would say that he had so many scoring opportunities this
Yeah,
past weekend. The Phantoms played up against, we talked about the Flyers maybe getting goalied a little bit this past weekend. The Phantoms
right.
definitely got goalied, despite the fact that they won 2 of the 3 games that they played. I think that the goalies they were up against just made some incredible saves, and a lot of them were on Wade Allison. I thought he had so many good chances and created plays despite being on a line pretty consistently. He's on a line with Gardner and Wilson. So like it's not like he's on with other top prospects here.
No, that's
He's
another problem.
yeah, he's had to carry that line offensively to a large degree, and he's getting the best chances he can get right now.
I think
Just a
that's
lot of
fair,
them
but
did not go in.
see, the problem is he's not a center.
Yeah,
So, like, he can't really break in on the third line either because of that.
right,
So
right.
it's either
So
fourth or it's yeah, it's either going to be that second line with those guys, but it's not like a true second line would be in the NHL, or fourth line with all the youngsters, and then you're the guy who's supposed to carry the water there. Either way, it's not going to help him continue to develop. Either way.
yeah, yeah, I think that's part of the problem here is that there isn't a good spot for him to really put a spotlight on his development. But there's a bunch of other guys we've got to talk about with this Phantoms team, and we will do that coming up next.
If you run a solo small business, you're an army of one, but you still need a CPA, a bookkeeper, separate payroll, and more. Let Collective take care of your paperwork while you still take care of business. Collective is the #1 financial solution for freelancers, contractors, self-employed entrepreneurs that lets you focus on your passion, not your paperwork. Let Collective handle all of your paperwork you dread, like corporation formation and compliance, taxes, bookkeeping, accounting, and even payroll. The best part, it's all at a fraction of the cost of a CPA. Collective knows that if your business of one makes over $80,000 a year, you will find the most value from their services. Join the thousands of solopreneurs who have saved an average of $10,000 a year on taxes with their structure. Right now, Collective is offering 1 month free and no onboarding fee when you go to collective.com/LockedOnNHL and tell them Locked On NHL sent you. That's a $550 value for free when you go to collective.com/LockedOnNHL and tell them Locked On NHL sent you. That's collective.com/LockedOnNHL and tell them Locked On NHL sent you.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe. So, one of the other, I think, things that the Phantoms are running into is in terms of the number of guys, right? And getting people ice time. We've talked about this this season. Is it a problem? Is it an opportunity here? And I think that, you look at a guy like Alexis Gendron as indicative of that issue where, they're getting him into the rotation, but it's really like on a 3-game weekend, he's getting 1 game. And it's because he's young. He's 19.
Right.
And, the other guys are closer and they're going to get more ice time. And I think, we talk about having tired legs in a 3-game weekend, but there's opportunity here because the Phantoms have enough healthy guys that they could rotate in those fresh legs and give guys like Gendron a chance. And when they do, he has a 2-goal game on Saturday. I was so thrilled for him. He played
Yeah,
really well.
I think it's good for him because right now, he was scoring a lot in the queue, and the queue is not a hard league, not the scoring. So It's better for him to be here. I get the four goals in 9 games. It's fine. That's good. If he's really going to be a goal scorer, though, he is going to have to be among the AHL's top goal scorers someday, because he is going to have other issues to try and make it
Yeah.
in the NHL. Lack of height. His speed's really good. Overall play, he's got some feistiness, but there's a lot to work on here. So he's probably a couple of year project before you even have any idea of what he might be in the NHL. But if he's going to score goals, that's a great way to start.
Yeah, and I think Lappy said something to that effect, Russ, where, he has other issues with his game, like you mentioned, and that the way that Gendron is going to be successful is by scoring goals. So he's got to score goals when he comes in, and he did.
Right.
So
Right.
I think that is so. I think everybody's sort of well aware of that being the situation with him. I think J.R. Avon has generally been playing well. He doesn't get points on the board every game, but I think his game has been pretty steady and improving in the areas away from the puck that he needs to improve on a little bit and get accustomed to the pro game. So that is a good thing to see as
Yeah,
well.
he's a guy that, if all goes well, by the age of like 22, you won't worry about Ryan Poehling anymore. You won't worry about a lot of stuff because he might be ready for the NHL at that point, 22, 23, and could be a very good player, like a really nice third line player. I know Flyers fans don't want to hear that because they feel like everybody is a third line player, but guess what? You still need some of those guys too.
Yeah, and I think we have some higher level players in the wings as
Right.
well in our prospect
So that'll
pool,
fit
like
in.
Cutter Gauthier, who's tearing up, Boston College hockey
Right.
right now. Him and Ryan Leonard are like the whole team, it feels like, to
Yeah.
some degree. So I think that you're right. There has to be room for both. I do want to make sure we talk about Felix Sandstrom because, he was sent down through waivers and he was the backup on Friday and finally got in on Saturday. And that game on Saturday against the Rochester Americans, they had their two top guys get suddenly called up to the Sabres, so they were a little bit weaker on there. But in that game, the Phantoms only allowed 15 shots on goal overall, which it was a tremendous defensive effort overall, really strong play. 4 goals allowed on those 15 shots for Felix Sandstrom,
Was
which
it
I'm
fun?
sure yeah, and so I think, like, 2 of them were on the penalty kill. Again, they're on the penalty kill too much.
Right.
But I think that, it was a little bit of a rough start for him, but he did make some good saves there. I think he just needs some time to
It
get
does. This
his
is
feet
where I
wet.
feel for the guy, because what was going on at the NHL level, I get it. It was a defensive move for the organization and he's still getting paid. That's all well and good, but he wasn't playing and he
Yeah.
wasn't going to play. And so that really hurt him. Like, we may not see the right Felix Sandstrom until half season or three-quarter season, if at all, this year. I mean, he might only play like 12 games or something like that. And that would be a terrible thing, because then you don't know what you have anymore, whether you want to re-sign him or not. 'Cause it's not like the Flyers are so deep in net that they couldn't use him in their organization, because I don't believe that for a minute.
Yeah, I think so. And, they seem to be in a rotation, or they'll create a rotation here with Peterson and Gahagan. I think Gahagan is going to get the short end of the stick on the
Yeah.
goaltending wise if it's, a 2-game week or something like that. But we do have 3 games coming up. We have on Friday, the Phantoms are at Hartford, Saturday again at Hartford, and Sunday at Providence, who they just lost to. Hartford, who they're close to in standing. So this is going to be a really big weekend on the road for the Phantoms.
Yeah, don't lose 2 at Hartford. That's my message.
Yeah, they're going to have to play really well against that team. We'll be back next week to discuss how that weekend of Phantoms action went. We'll be back tomorrow to discuss the Canes game and have our mailbag. So get those questions in via the app formerly known as Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Have a fantastic day, everyone.